Good evening, everyone. It is Thursday, January 8th, and we are calling to order our Eugene Police Commission meeting for January 2026. Hello, welcome. Good to see you all. Thank you, John Bradley, Vice Chair, for chairing the last two meetings. You've been a phenomenal Vice Chair. I appreciate your help. So first, review and approve agenda. Do we have any concerns, motions, or concerns, or anything we want to discuss first? Okay, do we have a?
Commissioner Boyd?
Yes.
Yes,
Commissioner.
we have two subject matter experts on the sexual assault policy present. And if it's all right with the body, I would like them to have a little time to talk about the policy during that subject on the agenda, rather than during public comment, if it's acceptable to the body.
Do we do a motion, or can we just say yeah?
There's no objection, you can so rule, but
Yeah, so I have a comment. I'm trying to think this through real quick, since I didn't know this was happening. We often have people come to our meetings who would consider themselves subject matters in the policies that we're talking about. So I just want us to be consistent, because I don't believe this is something we've ever done before. And, you know, like, if we're going to provide this opportunity to these folks and we haven't for others, or maybe we won't in the future, I think we need to be consistent. Like, I don't know these people also, so I don't know what the solution is, but I just wanted to put that out there, that if is this something we're gonna go into the future we're gonna do, and like how will we determine that these people get time, because having time at our table has value, right? And
Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing against the people that are here to testify, but I don't like making decisions on the fly like this that could set precedent for the future. I think it'd be safer just to hear the comments during public comment.
Okay. So for public comment, we usually give 2 minutes. Oh,
No, I was just gonna bring some, generally speaking, it's been my experience over the years is that if we have a commissioner that has, somebody that they want to add value to our discussion around policy, is that they've worked with our team and that we have facilitated, how we work them into the agenda. We invite them, and we work them into our agenda. We certainly have done that in the past. I can think of an instance where Chair Boggs at one point had his family member who was a practicing attorney in the South. During the building of the agenda, he brought that up as something that he wanted to do. We kind of shepherded that process and found the likely place to insert that individual to be able to give us a short presentation while we were, deliberating over a certain policy. So there is a mechanism by which we can do that. But I'm not sure to what extent my staff knew that was
okay.
gonna be happening.
And that was on me. Jack had mentioned, I was like, yeah, sure, the more the merrier. So we're learning still. Thank you. What's your rating?
yeah, I didn't inform the chair, vice chair, and Dr. Booth that I had invited people and asked how we should proceed.
Okay.
They are well qualified, but which their qualifications I did pass on. But I don't care how we want to do this. They're here.
Sure.
You want to hear from them at any point.
Okay. Can we, we'll work public comment, and if, depending on how many people are here for public comment, we could maybe allow an extra minute or two for folks. Would that be something that we as a commission could look at today?
We have any people already signed up for public comment?
That's a great question, Vice Chair. Do not.
No. So we have, for public comment, we have 5:30 to 5:35. Is that right?
5:35 to 5:55. So we have 20 minutes for public comment.
Okay.
And so far we do not have anybody online for public comment. Okay. Just pass.
Commissioner Bertrand and ourselves.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that is here for public comment this evening? Okay, all right, so I'd like to make a motion to allow our two folks here for public comment to have 5 minutes each, if they would like.
So move. Second.
Those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, it looks like it is unanimous. Thank you all. Okay. And this is, thank you, Chief, for that explanation, and moving forward, we'll make sure to check in. I will make sure to check in with you guys. We have another opportunity for subject matter experts. Okay, so review and approve agenda. So with that, change the amendment, public comment. Well, I guess we didn't change public comment. It's still 20 minutes. But with that small update, do we have anything else? Any other concerns with the agenda at this time? Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, those in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye. Okay, it is unanimous. Thank you very much. All right, public comment. Come on up. Welcome.
Should I sit right here?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I'm here today. My name's Daniel Brown, and I'm here to comment on the sexual assault proposal. My background is I was a veteran in the military for 10 years. I served as a legal assistant, not as a legal assistant to an attorney, just as my unit assignment. I then went to law school and ultimately ended up specializing in domestic violence. I worked for the domestic violence clinic for 2 years in law school and then 2 years after law school, providing legal aid to survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. After that, I did private practice for a while. I am currently employed at Lane Community College as their general counsel and as their Title IX coordinator, where I serve students who have been victims of sexual assault or domestic violence, or sexual harassment or gender discrimination. For this, I've also completed the mandatory advocacy course for people who are advocates for survivors of domestic violence or sexual assault in the state of Oregon. It's a 40-hour course. I've done it 3 times, twice online through OCADSVA and once in person with SAS. And I'm silver level FETI certified, which is FETI training is forensic experiential trauma interviewing training. It was developed through the military and the FBI, and it's being used throughout the state of Oregon at police departments at multiple levels. It's being used in the FBI. It's being used in multiple federal agencies to address essentially any interviewing requirement, it is advocated for very strongly by Sarah Sabri at the Oregon DOJ, and it is frequently available. And as part of my comments, I would encourage you to put in the qualifications for an interviewer to have a training similar to FETI or the actual FETI training. Additionally, I would also encourage you to make a specific hour training in for the requirements for and what I'm specifically talking about is section 3.4.7 qualified investigators to have an hour requirement similar to the Oregon advocacy course, and potentially even reference the Oregon advocate course for trauma-informed interviewing. The other major area that I would like to address is I don't. One of my major concerns through my experience as a domestic violence attorney and serving survivors of domestic violence has been police response and just essentially like the lack of belief of victims or survivors of sexual assault or violence. And the reason is, I think a lot of times is because trauma looks like you're lying. It looks like you're not telling the truth when you've just experienced a traumatic event. Your brain is all over the place. It's not able to say things in a linear way or to express what a police officer might be looking for. And because it can't express those things in a way, it's expressing the things in a way that police officers are trained to see as lying. And I would encourage you to think about a way to address that, either just specifically training police officers that that's what trauma looks like, but also to maybe build into this policy ways that you can account for that and accommodate for that. One of the recommendations in the FEDI process is to do a follow-up interview either 3 days or 1 week later, just to allow the brain to basically get out of trauma, to get out of crisis after like a rape or a sexual assault. That's how long it takes for the brain to just come out of that. The other thing that I would recommend is some sort of training that acknowledges that 98% of reports are true. And if I had those Vegas odds, I'd take them every time, right? And one of the things that I have personally experienced, again, is the disbelief of victims or survivors in their stories. And so just recognizing that. The last thing that I wanted to point out, which I think Elise will talk to and potentially have some questions, and I was hoping that even though that this is public comment, that perhaps you could answer the question, is why the change from 120 hours for evidence collection to 84 hours? And part of the reason that I'm asking that question, and Elise will follow this up, is the investigation agency for SAFE kits, sexual assault forensic exam kits. Their evidence-based practice is 120 hours for evidence collection, and they are the only providers of sane nurses and SAFE kit examinations here in Lane County. Also, the Oregon Attorney General's task force on the SATF, Sexual Assault Task Force, recommends 120 hours. That's our current recommendation by the state attorney general.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Chair, can I make a comment? Because it's clear to me that while we limit you to 5 minutes, just so that we can stay on task tonight, that there may be an opportunity for you to submit some recommendations or comments in writing. That would be great for us to take into consideration. So I want to just offer that as an opportunity, because we're not going to be able to get everything from you tonight, but we're happy to take those into consideration if you want to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
With our staff. So
Okay, great, thanks.
thank you.
Next speaker.
Hello. So my name is Elise Brown. I am a sexual assault nurse examiner here in the area. I'm also a nurse practitioner. I have been doing SANE exams for 3 years. And so I asked Daniel to come because he has a much more broad experience with this than I do. Mine is very focused when I am working with survivors of sexual assault. So my comment was mostly the 84 hours question. I noted that change from 120 to 84 hours. And I do work with RSI, the company that employs all of the same nurses in this area, and that is still our practice. I verified that nothing had changed as of yesterday. So questioning that change a little bit, International Association of Forensic Nursing, which has been our major national credentialing body for SANES, also still recommends 120 hours. And I fear that changing that may limit the window that survivors of sexual assault can come in and get treatment that they need to get and have the opportunity for evidence collection. I also have done some of the FETI training, not to the extent that Daniel has, and would strongly encourage having that follow-up built into the policy. You know, we can do all of the additional training all day, but having it built into the policy allows to be used sort of like a checklist to make sure we're hitting everything we need to when we're working with survivors. So I think that's it from me. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much for your time. For being here. All right. Do we have anybody else for public comment this evening? Alrighty then. Next item agenda, approve the December 11th minutes. Do we have any discussion concerns? Noted scriveners, oh, Commissioner Reedy.
On page 5, the packet, at top, Commissioner Wildes commented on total arrest data and but pleased to see there were more commendations and complaints. Was that than complaints?
I believe that was,
Thought so.
yes.
Yeah.
You are.
On the same page, my comment, about fifth, sixth paragraph down, Sergeant Jordan clarified the intent of the long sentence and said she would and improve the text to spell out the acronyms. I assume the word edit goes before the word it. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the December minutes with changes, recommendations from Commissioner Reedy? Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye, whichever you so choose. We have 6 out of 7. Commissioner Reedy stepped out of the room for the moment, so we will say that is a pass. Yes, sir.
No, I was just counting them.
Oh, thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, so just confirming, we've approved our December minutes with that adjustment. We have 6 out of 7 votes, we're good. All right, thank you. Liaison reports, and we will start with Counselor Ye.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm sure commissioners, some of you have heard about some of the shootings by federal agents that have happened both in Minnesota and now in Portland earlier today. And it's hard to find words to express, you know, how I feel about this and how our community feels about it. But what I do know is people have a lot of questions. And I had a great opportunity to talk to Chief Skinner earlier today about some of the questions that I've been hearing, concerns that people have in our community. And we had a really great conversation about the complexities that some of these situations have. And so I just like to take this opportunity to give him a chance to share some of that information he was able to share with me, with the rest of the commission, because I'm sure some of you are may receive, if you haven't already, similar questions because of your position on the police commission. And I just thought it'd be a good opportunity for us to have some shared information as people are reaching out to us.
Sure, thank you, Counselor. So a couple of things that I think are important, and as you can imagine, the network of law enforcement is very robust, and even as early as just a few seconds ago, I'm continuing to get updated around things that are happening. It's my understanding that the chief of police in Portland and the governor will be having a press conference at 6 p.m. And that the details around the shooting in Portland, based on the information I'm getting from Portland Police Bureau, actually is in fact a federal agent, but maybe is more in alignment with a recent individual involved in a shooting that's gang affiliated and had nothing to do with immigration enforcement. So we'll wait and see if those details come out. But certainly can understand that shooting with a federal agent involved on the heels of what happened in Minnesota is easy to kind of connect the dots on those things, and has created some concern within the community. So, one of the things that Councilor Ye and I talked about is what is EPD's role in all of this? And we've, as you know, taken very a hands-off approach to the largely and mostly peaceful protests that are happening down at the federal building. And will continue to do that as long as they continue to be peaceful. And maybe more importantly is the question around, okay, violence can happen both directions. It can happen protester on government worker and government worker on protest. And at what point do we insert ourselves in that particular situation? And it's hard. It's hard to give you an exact answer because it is a very much a case-by-case basis based on the totality of the circumstances, how we may respond. But what I can say is that, our job is community caretaking. And if it got to a situation where it got to a situation where it escalated to the point where we felt like our community at large was in danger, then I think my expectation of my police department and your expectation of this police department is that we would insert ourselves to a reasonable degree where we can bring peace to what is a total chaotic and dangerous situation. And so I think the thought is based on our posture recently is that would we just sit here at HQ and do nothing if we saw significant acts of violence happening down at, for instance, our federal building? And the answer to that is no. We wouldn't just sit here. We would actually deploy resources and do our very best to intervene and make sure that we could bring the peace to that particular chaotic situation. Like I've said all the time around, when we kind of engage and when we don't is, largely it's predicated around, is criminal behavior happening? Is crime occurring down there? And we've not seen that happen to a large extent. Today, it got a little bit dicey because we had some potential for some criminal mischief to happen, but largely they've been very, engaged, loud, but peaceful protests that are not engaged in criminal behavior. And so, that's always the measuring stick for us is whether or not crime is occurring, is this community in harm's way, and will we engage? And so I think it was an opportunity to share with Councilor Ye that, we don't just sit back and wait for things to unfold and not respond. If, for instance, we had gun violence down there, regardless of which direction it was headed or who the instigator was, we would respond. Response looks very different depending on the totality of the circumstances. I certainly am mindful about putting our folks in harm's way and having them just fly down there without a plan. But we would respond if we had gun violence. The piece that's really interesting is, and I think the piece that's really hard for this community is when they think about somebody wearing a uniform and a gun and a badge, is that people have grown to expect a very robust accountability mechanism here. And what we're seeing with federal employees is either a lack of accountability, or at least we don't understand what the accountability mechanism is. And so I think that feels confusing for people because they just don't know what to expect. If it's a federal agent involved in a lethal force situation, who does that investigation? Who holds them accountable? What jurisdiction does that go under? We would certainly respond to that and stabilize the scene. We would certainly respond to that and preserve evidence. We would certainly respond to that and care for victims. Just like our ESF crew would respond to that and care for the victims. But after that, that likely gets adopted by the federal government investigative resources, which would likely be the FBI. And then from there, it's their choice, unfortunately, how much they either engage or don't engage with us on how that goes. And that just feels different than what we're used to. Here when it's something that we're involved with or a partner agency is involved in, especially with Senate Bill 111, which articulates specifically how that gets approached and how it gets investigated. That doesn't apply to our federal partners. And so I think that's a difference that feels a little bit confusing for people. But we would respond to that. We would do that. Now, the question comes, at what level do you respond? I mean, you've got federal workers, federal agents that are designed and they're there specifically to protect that physical building. So it's physical protection. They engage in levels of use of force that people would say is criminal. Why aren't you responding to that? And what I would say is that there's in every instance of use of force, there's a burden of proof or a standard that happens that very much after the fact it's not a probable cause type of thing. It's very much after the fact evaluated against a variety of gram factors as to whether or not it was reasonable or not. So use of force never starts out as necessarily criminal without some depth of investigation to better understand that. Those for us start administratively, and sometimes they go criminal. If in our administrative look, we feel like there was a lack of justification to the point where we felt like it was criminal, and we asked our district attorney partners to look at all that information and determine whether or not they would file on that. I have an example of that happening recently on some decisions they have. And again, the federal direction that goes is very different and not clearly understood. And so I'm not quite sure how that shows up for them, how they investigate their use of force, how they hold their people accountable. Does this get prosecuted, for instance, in the most egregious way? Does it get prosecuted state or does it get prosecuted federally? And those prosecutors will argue about whether or not that happens. All of which we won't be involved in, likely, in the investigative piece of that. So that it's kind of a long-winded non-answer to not, that doesn't make you feel any better other than to say it's complex. And it's on a case-by-case basis. The one thing that I will say, and I know that the mayor had reached out to me earlier and talked about wanting to put out a statement, and I think we'll know more information about whether a statement should be warranted after we hear from what happened up in Portland. But the one thing that I will say when it comes to federal resources in our town is that I don't need federal resources in our town and don't want federal resources in our town. And I would say that federal deployment is often predicated on the behavior that they're seeing. And so as much as I can tell people, let's not invite what we don't want. Let's continue to do what we're doing, which is protesting and letting our voices be heard in a peaceful, loud and peaceful manner. But the last thing in the world I need is to try and navigate 50 federal resources down here that feel like they need to be down here because, and they will use us as a community as the excuse for why they deployed down here. And so I do think we have some ability to influence that. And so I would love nothing more for us to continue to provide for a platform for people's outrage to be heard while still doing it without criminal behavior being associated or a part of that. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. I think at the end of this, Councilor Ye, we will respond. This community can expect us to respond in their need. When it becomes a matter of safety for this community, we will respond.
I think that is very helpful to answer your question, and also complex and a lot to think about. I really appreciate you getting into the weeds a little bit, even though it's kind of a lot to process. I don't know if that other people feel that way too. It's a lot to kind of dig into and think about. But I think at the end of the day, hearing you say that EPD will respond, should they be called about violence that is happening or something dangerous that is happening in our community, and that we can trust that our local officers are going to determine whether they need to be there or not, and not relying on someone else to tell you whether you need to be there or not, does make me feel better that those are decisions that are going to be happening locally. And also to hear you say that we don't want an escalation here in our town. We don't want, like you said, 50 federal agents. You know, we have very well trained, excellent officers in our community that are capable of keeping our community safe.
I think the last thing that I would say, just for the good of the order, is, you know, the federal building has been a focal point of the attention. And for obvious reasons, but I don't want to lose sight of what was also happening in that federal building, which is veteran services, social security services. And so there's a very, very small footprint around immigration services in that building. And so, while I understand why that's the focal point and a likely place to congregate for voices to be heard, I would also ask this community to understand that people are actually served out of that building. Important services are coming out of that building that we don't want to disrupt either.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Councilor Bonet. Councilor Rose?
I don't really have much to report. I think shortly after our last meeting, we went on council break. We are going through the city manager selection process right now. And I know we have events going on starting Sunday and through, I think, at least Tuesday. So hopefully we'll end up with a clear choice.
May I ask a question? So that process, so it starts on Sunday and goes through Tuesday, so are those different interview?
Yes, different interview panels. It's actually already, I mean, it's been going on for a while. There's been a number of vetting processes to get down to where we are now. So it's probably incorrect for me to say starting Sunday night. This last phase is starting Sunday. It's a better way to put that.
All right, and Commissioner Neal, I believe, is out this evening, so we will skip Commissioner Neal, Human Rights, or I'm sorry. Am I jumping over you? I am so sorry, Vice Chair. Human Rights Commission, do you have anything for us this evening?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. So we did have our annual Homeless Persons Memorial Day event. There was no chili thrown to my knowledge this year, so that's helpful. We do appreciate the EPD's chief. We appreciate EPD's assistance. There was some information that city staff received on the front end that perhaps there was risk, and city staff had to make some decisions about safety and security, and so I appreciate your officers that did help keep things safe for us that evening. It was a fitting memorial. We're working this year to try to combine efforts with community advocates for next year. We did not have a Human Rights Commission meeting in December, so that's the extent of the report. Thank you, Chair.
May I ask a question? Is it an annual event that takes place usually around the same time every year?
On the winter solstice, on the 21st of December, each year is supposed to be on the longest night of the year.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. All right, Commissioner comments. We will start with Commissioner Bertrand. Do you have anything for us this evening?
Thank you, Chair. Nope, not this evening. Just want to thank everyone that's here and thank you. Unfortunately, I was not here last month due to some medical needs here, but I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you, Commissioner Bertrand. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you. I appreciate
Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the subject of the chief's comments now, I made this comment a couple months ago, but it's still incredibly appropriate. We're just witnessing such undisciplined use of force, just everything from pepper spray to physical, not just the shootings, but just in general, we're inundated with this undisciplined, visuals every day. And it's just so incredibly important to stress to our rank and file that that's not, I mean, there's all sorts of views in every department and, people may view what they're seeing differently, but it's an incredible moment to emphasize, our discipline and our use of force protocols. And then the other thing was simply that I am not I'm completely skeptical of social media, you know, I don't put truth to it, but today there were reports that sidewalk chalking got the attention of the motors. And that there was enforcement, and you mentioned a second ago, criminal mischief. And if that's what it is, I think it's not inappropriate to discuss, or at least raise the issue of, are we really, you know, enforcing sidewalk chalking, or is there more to that? And, like I said, I'm not taking it as true, I'm just, that, you know, that's what was reported was happening to, so. Thank you, those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Lyman. Counselor Gross?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to start by saying I appreciate our police department. Appreciate the professionalism. I've had the opportunity to not only sit in a council seat observing them, but, you know, almost 37 years of experience on and off the street with our fire department. And the other thing I wanted to make a comment on was whenever there's a incident, especially when there's a lot of emotion involved, it's always best to let the thing kind of sort itself out through the investigation to really understand what happened. I used to always say we'd pull up on a fire, for example, and we'd take about 5 seconds, 6 seconds to assess it, formulate a plan and go to work. And then later, after all the facts are known, and you don't have all the facts when you first pull up, you have the armchair quarterbacks come in and tell you everything you should have done differently. And I've been on both sides of that, so I understand that piece as well, but it's just sometimes the way things appear to begin with aren't the way they actually occurred or unfolded. So I do think that the whole investigative process and sorting things out is really important. And it's real easy to jump to conclusions without having all the facts. So I just wanted to share that piece of personal experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Gross. Commissioner Wilgus?
Thank you, Chief, for your comments tonight. My heart is just heavy with what's going on right now, and I appreciate the time you spent addressing it. Another thing I'll mention is that part of my role professionally is reporting out on some EPD stats that go on downtown. And I was pleased to report to our stakeholders, since trespassing was the #1 priority in 2025, that 49% of the incidents were self-initiated by officers, which I think is impressive, based on the staffing levels that you all negotiate on a daily basis. So I applaud the department for that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilgus. Counselor Ye?
Yeah, thank you. Our public commenters have left, but in case they watch this later, I just wanted to thank them for coming. I thought what they had to share was really interesting and useful. And I also want to appreciate Chief for offering an avenue for them to get us more information. And I think giving them a little extra time was an appropriate compromise, given the situation, and it worked out really well. So thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Ye. Commissioner Brady?
Yeah, I want to welcome our chair back. I missed you. Glad to have you back. Really feels good. The question that the chief addressed. My heart is heavy too, and I really feel for the department and the position it is in, because it is an impossible position. Because the scenario that comes to my mind is this. An officer is to use deadly force only in circumstances where life is threatened. So if an officer sees someone raising a firearm pointing it at someone, in general, the officer is to use deadly force to prevent harm. If the person raising the firearm is wearing paramilitary gear and a face mask and is part of an armed gang, the officer's in an impossible position. And later on, we can sort it out and find out what really happened and whether the man who had raised the pistol was properly authorized and whether the shooting that he carried out and the person who was dead was appropriate or not. But that won't save the life of the person there. And I'm not expecting the police to intervene in these situations as they would in others. But another part of my mind tells me this. Our safety is protected. We pay for police and National Guard to protect our safety. We do not do it ourselves. When the system fails to protect us, I certainly do not advocate this, but there will be people who will conclude that they must protect themselves and their community. We are not in a normal situation where the actions of federal agencies fall into those we have seen throughout my life and throughout much of our nation's life. We are seeing something of very different, lawless and dangerous character. When our president says the officer who shot had to, in self-defense, was run over by the deceased, we've all seen the video. It means reality and law and evidence and investigating it later. We're in a very bad situation, and we're all going to have to be on the very top of our game to deal with this, that our country come out of it intact. That's all.
Vice Chair Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. I think, all the other commissioners and counselors have said the things that I've been thinking. I'm troubled by what has happened. Also, I'm not sure that I understand enough to make judgments myself, but it's all concerning and troubling. Also want to thank the chief for giving voice to those individuals in and around the federal building complex that may not be affiliated with law enforcement at all, are just kind of there by happenstance, or because of the proximity that they are to the federal building. Federal building, of course, you will know, it holds more than just ICE and DHS, so that sort of thing. It includes a mental health clinic and a place where people who are experiencing homelessness go to try to recover from homelessness. When it's shut down like it was today, it impacts those people negatively. And my hope for the community, of course, is that we can combine, we can share space well enough. I guess I should say we can share space well enough that those who are the most vulnerable among us aren't impacted negatively because of demonstrations, which are also very important and represent efforts to protect other very vulnerable people. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I'd like to first thank you, Vice Chair, for chairing the last two meetings. I'm getting caught up in reviewing the November and December meetings, and was just impressed and grateful for this group. We have such engaged, smart individuals from all walks of life, and I'm grateful that I get to be a part of this commission. So thank you for each of your pieces of engagement and your thoughtfulness. It means a lot, and it getting to see you work through the policy that we've set out to work through. You just made it look like butter on toast, just sliding right through. So thank you all for your work on that. And Chief, yes, you have the most impossible job in the world, but you handle it so well, and you're so kind, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much. And I I'm a squish and I will wholeheartedly admit that I have to minimize my social media and news consumption just because I work in social services and I would shut down and I couldn't handle it. So the fact that we have so many people who care and are thoughtful and do pay attention, I appreciate it very much. And I really appreciated your comment of just about Counselor Groves about taking a moment and letting things kind of, it's almost like taking a deep breath and, okay, you know, it may not be immediate, but we're gonna figure out, we're gonna get to those details. Let's not jump to assumptions. For me, that's a moment of self-care and like, okay, we don't have to react this moment. Let's take a moment to breathe. And I appreciate that you do a lot of that, Chief. You're like, okay, we're gonna look into this, we're gonna get to it. Let's not jump to any conclusions, and I appreciate that. So, thank you, that's all I have. You wanna jump into your report? Let's do it.
Sure, let's do that and see if maybe we can talk about something other than this for, I will just. Put a kind of an exclamation point on this conversation, you know, as. To. Judge's point, you know, it is also an opportunity to appreciate the professionalism this department has shown. We are not perfect. We make our mistakes, and we hold each other accountable, and we're accountable to this community, but it reminds me of being the deputy chief in Hillsborough and watching some of the other neighboring jurisdictions grapple with things and learning from their mistakes and finding ways to be to do better and be better. I think that what I struggle with sometimes is from a perception and reputation standpoint is how easy it is for people to kind of lump every uniform band together. And what we have here is a unique situation where this department is so unique in the sense of its training and accountability that it is an opportunity to learn and learn from what we're seeing is not the way not to do things and not be cavalier in that, but to also use that as a springboard for the importance of our training and accountability.
And I was saying, continue on the
Yeah,
direct, I
keep
wasn't,
No, I didn't
saying
take it that
anything
way.
different, all right.
You just
okay.
you just teed me up nicely,
Alright.
so I appreciate it.
Anytime.
I appreciate that. And thank you for the kind comments. I'm not sure they're needed, but I appreciate the kind comments about the difficult nature of the job. So a couple of things that are going on that I think are really important. We this week had a chance yesterday to go downtown and meet with Peer Navigators, which is a new service downtown. It has been awarded, that contract's been awarded to Ideal Options, which is also the same group that does our deflection program, which is wildly successful in Wayne County. Wayne County is often seen as the model or example by which deflection program. It was predicated on the LEAD program, which came out of Marion County. That they're doing a great job, and that great job is largely due to the fact that this police department has fully embraced the opportunity to deflect people away from the criminal justice system into on a path of wellness as opposed to a path of incarceration. And so that same group is going to do our peer navigation downtown, which essentially means we've found yet another way to provide a resource for a need downtown, mostly to our business owners and visitors that are seeing things that feel disorderly. They're not necessarily criminal in nature, but they feel disorderly. And with that level of disorder also comes anxiety for people, which can manifest itself in a feeling of being unsafe. And so we're thinking about how we respond to those things differently than having a police officer do that. And so with our co-responder program, we've adjusted just a little bit, and now we have a complementary peer navigator. And the piece of that I am so excited about to watch unfold and be successful is those folks have lived experience, and so they can meet people where they're at and say, I've been right where you're at. The other piece that I was really impressed with this group is it comes with a high level of accountability. Recovery involves accountability. Moving out of your place and on a path of wellness requires some level of accountability for people to have some stick-to-itness to be able to do that. And they understand that, and they're helping people with that accountability mechanism as they continue to do that. Now, this group which is really skilled at what they do. And you would hope that every time we go out and we ask somebody if they want to do something different, the answer is yes. But we also know that that's not the answer all the time. But if we keep asking, then on the 15th try, if they say yes, then it's worth it. And so this group is the group that keeps trying. While we don't want officers responding to the same thing over and over and over again, that is just not the model that we're hoping to achieve. This group is that group that can case manage individuals, get to know individuals, and keep trying and move people out. I met them yesterday. They started on Monday. So what is that? 48 hours from when I met them, and they already found 8 people willing to go into deflection. So I'm hopeful. And I look at you, Katie, oftentimes because you have a tendency to feel the brunt of the frustration of the downtown group, and it comes out this way. And so I'm hopeful with us having a renewed interest in wanting to hold people accountable that are engaged in criminal behavior, mostly on the backs of our private property owners having trespass letters on file and asking us to take those seriously. And those individuals that aren't technically trespassing or really engaged in criminal activity, but are creating disorder, that we have another resource for that. So I'm excited about that. Excited about the work that Clary has done around that with Ray Brown downtown. I think it's wait and see, but I'm hopeful and very optimistic that that's going to be fun for us to see the outcomes of that. More internally speaking, Sean Adams, our deputy chief, retired at the end of this month. Jake Burke has been direct appointed into the deputy chief spot. If you haven't had a chance to get to know Jake Burke, he is great. He's going to be fantastic. He's fully engaged in a lot of things. He's been around this table, has led largely the discussions around the ALPR cameras, which have since all been removed from the light poles. We left up the solar panels because it was just too much work. We're likely, when Flock shows up to pick up their cameras, we're likely to get into a little bit of a fist fight downstairs over the fact that we touched their cameras. But that was a decision that I made. Instead of duct taping and bagging cameras, we just removed them, and so they're safely stored downstairs and will be picked up sometime this month. But you've seen Jake in that conversation, and so he's going to be a great deputy chief for the organization. Which also meant that we're in the process of promoting a new captain. So we're going to be going through that the 3rd week of this month. I think it's the 20th, 21st, somewhere in there. We'll have those, and we have a variety of panels that involve both internal and external stakeholders for us to select our new captain, and that'll be an internal selection. And from that, it is likely to trickle down to lieutenant and sergeant, which is always really healthy for an organization to feel like there's movement and opportunity. And so a lot of things happening in 2026 that I think are going to be really good. It also gives us an opportunity to look at the organizational chart, make sure the functions are under the right places, where we can make some adjustments, where we can get creative. I have a couple of vacant positions that I'm going to try and be creative on how we meet emergent needs with those new positions. So I think there's hopefully a high level of optimism around the organization, around some of the change that we see. And with that, last thing I'd say, a level of creativity, our recruitment team continues to do a really good job of trying to recruit. We've had a bit of a slump lately with good quality candidates. I just failed 10 backgrounds for a variety of very legitimate things, which is not what you want to hear from me when you're down 20 officers. But we have an open recruitment coming up, and we have a recruitment team is going on the road. So they're going to Southern Oregon University, which has a very robust criminal justice program. After that, they'll be up at Western Oregon University and they've been given time in the classroom with soon to be graduating seniors that are in this space and an opportunity for them to test on site instead of having to come up here. So we're getting really creative on how we are grabbing these folks out of our university system. And so I'm really excited to see how that looks and kind of the fruits of their labor. So I appreciate their innovation and their creativity. All right. So I'll stop there.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
All right. DUI enforcement 4.11. Looks like we are coming back to this evening.
Yes, I'll wait to hear any feedback because we kind of discussed a lot last time, but I made all the changes that everybody kind of forward, and it's pretty much there. I don't know if anybody else has any stuff to add to it.
She's looking at me, she's looking at me.
You read it.
All I wanna say is, I hope I'm not the only one. These red lines are awesome. This really allows you to see the
Did you just
evolution.
record that? These red lines are awesome.
It took a while, but, not with you, Sergeant Jordan, but just in general, but, like, it just makes the review of the policy so much smoother and easier. And so I'm grateful for you, and I noted that the changes were made. And, I don't have any comments about the policy. I'm prepared to approve.
Commissioner Raby.
I got three really little ones, and they're of no significance besides basically fact.
Okay.
On, 4411.3,
Mhm.
under 411.3.1, we have 0.1 and 0.3.
That's the drawback from the red line, is that if you look at the red line copy and then you look at the Excel here. Sorry.
No, it's hardly important, but,
We can fix it.
on the next page, at the top of the page on C, that's, 411.3.2C. I just have a question. Probable cause may also dissipate. Does that mean after talking to the person a while, you begin to think, no, he's probably not drunk? Is
Yeah.
that what that says?
Absolutely, yeah, we wanna make sure that our officers are never kind of locked in and think, oh, well, I stopped him for this and I did the test and I feel obligated somehow to have it end a certain way. They should never feel like that because they want, or, you know, we want to make sure that they have.
Yeah,
probable cause.
I think that's what it meant, but I just wasn't sure with
It goes away.
probable cause dissipating, what that meant.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
The other one is the next page,
Mhm.
which is 411.3.3E1. In the forum room at EPD headquarters. It's just repeated.
Yes, okay, I also see some issues with some bullet points there. I did fix these, but I don't know why the changes didn't stay. A, B, C, F,
But other than that,
G,
right.
H, I. So those bullet points will be fixed, and then, the form room, yes. Anything else?
I had a question, oh, no, next policy, just kidding, I preemptively, that was gonna be my only, was the numbering, the lettering.
Yeah.
Decided to do its own fun thing,
The beast.
but it looks great, and I have to, also, what Commissioner Lyman said. Getting to see this is really helpful, so that, also, we're not just giving you stuff, you're like, I did this, stop it. You wouldn't say that, but I'd be thinking it. And I believe Commissioner Lyman, you were the one who requested this, so thank you.
Yeah.
Kudos to you.
Good luck with getting.
It's a lot of work. I appreciate it. That's all I really,
Yeah.
really want to emphasize. It's not, it's a hassle. It's not friendly.
No, but it's
Good luck with
appreciated.
the numbering.
Yeah,
Situation,
the
because
formatting. is tough.
That happens to me frequently when we're, and then I end up like trying to copy and paste numbers elsewhere.
Yep.
And just fix it because it's really complicated.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to cooperate.
Yeah.
Right, any other comments? Commissioner?
And I move that we, adopt this policy recommendation.
Okay.
All in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. All right, we have unanimous approval. Thank you so much. All right, so we have another policy. Congratulations, team. Next policy, 3.4, sexual assault.
Yeah. Okay, so I kind of want to start, because we did have some great input from the public. If you don't mind if I start, we had great input from the public. I took notes on that. I would like to just summarize that again, because we have our subject matter expert, that we brought from within the department, Detective Travis Cooper here. He's a very experienced, law enforcement officer. He's been a detective for
3 years.
3 years now, but I know that he's always been a great investigator. He's always been one of our he's an FTO, he has taught report writing, he's just always been really at the top of his game, and I know even though he wasn't my FTO, I learned a lot from him when we were on the street together, so what I will say is we had some feedback about training requirements, and please correct me if I'm messing this up. It sounds like our input from the public was that they would like our detectives to have it in our policy that they get FETI training, which is a type of forensic interviewing technique, as well as mandating a minimum number of hours for through an Oregon advocacy course requirement, and then also just making sure that we are training all of our officers and investigators to kind of use that trauma-informed approach to believe victims and survivors of sexual assault. And then the final thing, which I know Detective Cooper will touch on, is the 84 versus 120 hours. So what I can speak to about what we've changed in this policy before we go to that is that we definitely updated. You'll see in the red line version, there was this call taker section. We kind of tossed around having that removed because call takers with our comm center, they have their own policies and procedures, but it was actually decided just to keep this in because they still rely on this policy and it's not really spelled out in theirs yet, so we're gonna keep that in for now. And then other than the time frame, which we'll talk about, we did change our kind of list of questions that were in there. We don't want to get too locked in, and I'll let Detective Cooper talk about that. We don't want to get too locked into certain questions. We want to kind of train and have guidelines on use trauma-informed techniques within these parameters and go from there. And other things were just kind of little cleanups because this policy was revised last year. So that being said, I don't know if we want to, if you don't ask questions first, or if you want to have Detective Cooper
Whichever.
talk first.
Counselor Gross?
Actually, while it's fresh, I have a
Yeah.
question. And maybe it's getting in with you, Detective, but the 84 to 120 hours, I was hoping to hear a little bit more about.
Yes,
thoughts
that's,
on that.
it's 120 hours, so
120,
that you guys are doing your job. No, that was my mistake. I was looking at, I think, some old documentation, so.
And then another question I had, as far as those certifications go, I'm assuming this is part of recurrent training as well. It's not just a one and done.
As far as I know.
Yeah, so there's like the FETI training, the forensic experiential trauma informed training. I will tell you that there is FETI exposure training, like an 8-hour course, and you can probably find even like a 1-hour online that will kind of explain like the nuts and bolts. I know when at times I teach in the pre-academy, and one of the materials that I send out commonly to new hires is a 10-minute, 15-minute video about forensic experiential trauma interviewing. The certifications those are longer courses, several days, a lot of money, and there's actually some you could say prosecutorial problems with when somebody becomes certified in these interviewing techniques. Because once you're certified, but you're not practicing that all the time as your job, there's more questions that the defense can be asking of you.
That was my concern.
Yes, and so that's why personally, as a detective, we use our forensic interviewers at Child Welfare and the Kids First Center, and I've myself purposely avoided getting any sort of certification because of the problems that can happen in a prosecution. I think more uniform exposure for officers to that is great. Kind of really the exposure training kind of explains a bit of the why. It's really kind of common sense, open-ended questioning. So it's not a hard concept for people to get.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Do you have anything else you'd like to kind
You
of?
want to talk about the questions?
Yeah, you want to kind of lead us through what?
Yes,
recommendations
so
you made,
you
I
got,
guess?
we have our EPD, our resource guide that our officers use. And there's questions in there for sexual assault investigations. Those questions are also contained in policy. And I, came to you about having that changed because I know in our unit, we would like to see officers just doing a basic who, what, when, where, why, how type of question. And using those more trauma-informed interviewing techniques. A lot of the questions that are in the research guide, they don't necessarily pertain to, different situations, asking, whether the suspect was circumcised or not, may not pertain to a particular investigation, but it's one of those that said we should be asking in policy. And so we'd rather, I know officers in our unit would rather see the victims having positive experiences with officers, not being inundated with too many details. And that officers get a general summary and identify and seize perishable evidence. And not rely on kind of a cookie cutter investigation platform.
Can you, I mean, I think it'd be helpful for the group if you could kind of walk through kind of the life cycle of one of these investigations. I think sometimes it's, I often have heard saying this, that so many people's perception is shaped based on what they see on TV or whatever show they watch. You think about an officer responding to a first report of a sexual assault. What's the expectation of the officer, to your point, getting the who, what, when, where, why, how that gets handed off maybe to your unit, and then how you interface in a depending on the demographic of the victim, interfacing with kids first or doing something like that, and really where the forensic interviews are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So our sexual assault reports come from two sources. One is a call is made to the police department, or a report is made to child welfare. The child welfare reports are cross-reported to us. Those go to the violent crime sergeants, who will read those reports and make a decision as to whether those reports need to be followed up on by a detective or not. A lot of our reports are coming in through patrol. So if somebody wants to report a sexual assault, it's going to be a patrol officer response, typically one officer. Those could be incidents that happened, minutes before up to 30 years ago. It's not uncommon for there to be a delay of days, weeks, months in these cases for a variety of obvious reasons. The patrol officers, you're expected to take a report and to seize any perishable, identify and seize perishable evidence. And then if it falls within like the 120 hours, our officers are pretty good, I think, about encouraging people to have sane examinations and helping facilitate such. So once the report is in, a patrol sergeant reviews it, signs off on it, or sends it back to the patrol officer to make corrections. Once it's approved, then that goes to the violent crimes sergeants, and they will review those reports and then assign accordingly. And then I know when I get a report, I try to review it as soon as possible, and then see if that's something that I can back burner, or if there's something that I need to jump on immediately. Yeah.
What would be an example, when you hear back burner on a sexual assault, you're just like,
Mhm.
that this seems a little incongruent for people. Give me an example of how you prioritize these, because it's not like you're getting one a month. I
Yeah,
know that these detectives are carrying anywhere from 30 to 50 cases, and very, very busy, so.
yeah, so a case that I might back burner, it'd be something where somebody's reporting something that happened to them 15 years ago. So there's certain crimes where the statute of limitations can extend all the way up until a person's 30th birthday. So if they are in their mid-20s reporting something that happened to them 11, when they were 11 years old, it's unlikely that there's going to be evidence that I need to really go out and try and seize, right? So I'll typically touch base with the victim and then triage my caseload, because there's going to be other cases where I might need to cancel my plans for the evening and go out and try and see something.
The policy references qualified investigators. Are all of the violent crime detectives qualified investigators under this policy, or are there specialists?
I don't know what is called qualified.
It's here.
Maybe being hired by the job. The job. Where's that at?
That's right, it starts here.
Yeah, quality investigators. I don't know. I can tell you that there's not a statutory definition of a detective. And there's not a detectives academy in Oregon. There's expectations of detectives that they develop develop expertise in a certain area and have can use advanced investigative skills.
But to your point, qualified suggests there's qualifications. And we don't articulate what the qualifications are.
Well, the policy is listing qualifications, but if in fact whoever's up gets the call and there's confidence that the forensic investigatory skills are there, then maybe it begs that we don't need to define this category of qualified investigators in the policy.
No, I agree with that.
Counselor Yang.
Yeah, thank you. So when I read this, I really appreciate Chief you asking to go through what a typical case might look like. That was really helpful because that is not what I was picturing, because when I read this qualified investigators section, my assumption was not that the first point of contact was a patrol officer, because, and I realize there are real world staffing issues and all that, but my assumption was that someone with a higher level of specialized training was making that first contact. And not saying we need to change our system,
Right.
but I do think that that first point of contact can be extremely important. And I don't feel like I understand enough about this issue with the FETI training and it being an issue for trial to have an informed opinion in that area, but it does concern me, considering the current and history of these crimes and how folks have interacted with, seeking justice, that there isn't a specialized, that there isn't someone with specialized training making that first contact.
The couple of thoughts just to maybe bring some clarity to that. So, aside from the way that some of these calls can come in, there are instances where, especially in a university town, we'll get a phone call where, we have a victim call us and say, I think I was just sexually assaulted. I just woke up, I think I've been sexually assaulted. Or a call that we hear somebody screaming and we think, and so patrol is the first response for that, to be able to have an immediate response. Detectives are not a 24/7 resource. And so sometimes there will be an initial response by a patrol officer to be at least do the intake or to get it into us to write a preliminary report and be able to go to the detectives and be able to do that. That is likely what could happen when it comes to that. So some of the other stuff is to the Detective Cooper's point, getting notified by DHS and or other ways of doing that. The other thing too is our deployment model is different than other agencies. We have generalists. I mean, we have a violent crimes unit, we have a property crimes unit. Some of the agencies have, within their detectives, a sexual assault unit, the robbery unit, the homicide unit, they do those kinds of things. We don't necessarily, and I don't know, maybe you can share a little bit about. You know, I think my guess is that some detectives kind of gravitate towards certain crimes within violent crimes, but it is general, there is more of a generalist model. It's kind of an all hands on deck type of approach with many of our crimes.
Yeah, so within our unit, we do sexual assault, A and B felony, assaults, murder, and yeah, child abuse stuff. We can be assigned any of those, and then domestic violence, and people have their own preferences for the kinds of cases that they like. There's a few of us that will also work the internet crimes against children, child sex abuse material cases. Not everybody necessarily wants to do that, for obvious reasons. So does that answer?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's, when you think about certifications, it'd be great if we had a model where I can take this 6 detectives and that's all they're doing is sexual assault, send them to certification and have them ready to go and they're responding to all of our sexual assault. And in this case, that's not the case. We could send somebody to a training, and which is a perishable skill and not able to use that certification for, a year or so. And then you wonder, okay, at what point are they qualified to actually respond to a sexual assault? So.
But if we're having 30-ish a month, I find it hard to believe they wouldn't be able to use it enough to justify that they are practiced in it, but.
Yeah.
I also don't understand,
Yeah.
like, I realize this is like our first hearing some of this stuff. so,
Sure, there's a if you go on YouTube, there's a video called Trauma in the Brain. It's a video that I sent out to some of our new recruits that goes over the way people mentally process traumatic events and how they may communicate afterwards. And so it really, it's demonstrating just a concept of letting victims communicate, describe things in their own words. You can ask clarifying questions and just open-ended questions, as opposed to what we don't want is victims being peppered with a bunch of multiple choice type questions that where we end up leading them, into certain options, or maybe they don't feel like that maybe they feel like they leave the experience feeling like they should remember things that they think they should, just because of the way the brain processes traumatic events. So we want people in those initial contacts to come away with a positive, as much as you can, experience. So,
Where does that forensic interviewing happening? If it's not us as certified interviewers, where does that, I mean, at some point, there is some level of forensic interview that could happen depending on the victim's age, right?
yeah, well, certainly that's what we do with children. I trust you guys are familiar with the Kids First Center, the child advocacy centers, where we rely on them to interview children because they have the certification, but I think more importantly, they're the ones that are getting the reps day after day, speaking with kids and doing these interviews. If somebody could be an adult and maybe if they have a disability, we'll still send them over there just because maybe that environment is still a better environment for them. Otherwise, we're gonna be interviewing people just as we do. Coming back to you mentioned the certification, not understand the certification problems for it. Basically, if like I were to get certified in a certain interviewing technique, it opens up the opportunity for a defense to quiz me on the finer details of like the certification, like put me in the position of like having to testify as an expert when I'm not. And so it just basically, whereas if we're gonna use people like the folks at Kids First, it's better to let the people that are doing that as their job day after day, do those interviews and they're the ones that can testify as experts.
Commissioner Willis?
I was thinking about response, based on Counselor Gay's comments, and then I was thinking, there are times when victims may call for help and then change their mind about actually reporting, and I would much rather have a quicker response by an officer who may not be one of those experts, giving the victim an opportunity to report when they're ready. Having had to bring a loved one to a police station, I'm not convinced they would have reported later had they not had the opportunity to report to an officer in that moment. So that may be another way for us to think about it.
The other thing that we're trying to be mindful of based on our resources is to, if somebody calls us in that moment and it needs an immediate response, is to understand as much as we can about the circumstance, to send the right officer to the right response. To be mindful of the gender dynamics of sexual assault victims and being able to do that. We don't always have that luxury, but I would just point out that we try to be smart about the type of resource we send to that particular.
Commissioner Lemon?
Thanks, Chair. No, I just want to say that I think it makes sense that the analogous to me is the DRE, the drug recognition expert who gets on the stand in a DUI trial and gets a completely different cross-examination based on this designation that they're an expert, and they get completely drilled on all of the protocols and the science behind it and everything, rather than experienced detectives who interview for a living with knowledge of how to approach these interviews, but then not subjecting them to, well, you're a certified, forensic sexual assault examiner and all the science behind it and everything else. To me, it actually makes sense.
That's, you said it, what I was trying to say perfectly.
Can you say that again?
No.
Okay.
You really.
Later.
Watch the tape.
Yeah, I want to congratulate Sergeant Jordan on having done a really good job rewriting this.
The credit.
and- Thank you. The question, one of the most important questions in the field is that there is often a difference of immediate interests between the victim and the officer responding. The officer responding needs information, and if it's just happened, needs information fairly promptly. The victim this is the last time they want to have a conversation with anybody about the whole thing. And how that is handled. And I understand the officers are not being insensitive because they're jerks necessarily. There are some, I had a personal experience. My first wife, before we were married, was raped on the street in New York at gunpoint, and I managed to persuade her to report to the police, and we went to the police station because it didn't come out. And an officer with his shirt tail hanging out, sitting down, yeah, what? You took a shower, no, it's ridiculous. It was a traumatic experience, and that was not unique. This is some time ago, and this is not Eugene, but one of the reasons that there is a reluctance in many cases to report sexual assault is the fear of the interview that will follow, of having a disbelieving authority, often male, yeah. How about the details? Come on, tell me all this. And the way it was rewritten was excellent. One thing, my wife looked at the original document and said, why isn't the first question, do you feel safe talking here? And in fact, this is now in here, moved to a neutral location.
Yeah.
Before you had the discussion, this is excellent. And I know that there's full consciousness of this contradiction of immediate interests. It, in the policy, it's handled well, it's trained this way. And I have a good deal of confidence the department will do this the right way. So thank you for the work.
Commissioner Williams. Let's see, I'm on page 2.
3.6.4, I'm on point 1 and B, number 3. Follow all of that.
Oh, is that Stockton?
I'm,
3.6?
no, I'm on sexual assault.
Okay.
And I am on. Yep, I'm on stalking, so we'll just save that.
Okay, sorry. I was like, I don't think that's.
Commissioner or Counselor Ye.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. I think I get it now. And it makes sense now that it's explained. Sometimes you have to hear things a few times before they process, or maybe it's just late, I don't know. But yeah, I can get why having the skills but not having the certification might to our benefit to support the victim in this case. So, my last question, this is more just like, I'm not, there might be history behind this, but the 3.4.9 saying that people don't have a polygraph, is that because that's something that was historically required and we just wanted to, or maybe I don't understand, but it's, to me, it sounds like it's just saying, you don't have to do, am I on the wrong one?
Well, no, I mean, I see what you're saying. I mean, it cites the ORS, which as far as I know is still governs that. So we like to, even if we would never want to do that, we like to reaffirm our, we're going to comply with that ORS that says you can't do that.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It would just seem a little odd, like, well, why would we
Yeah.
think this if it didn't seem like something we would make people do to begin with,
Yeah.
so, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Should we open up, make a motion to?
Well, I'm wondering, because I know the chief has left open the door to those.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think, you guys have. This is my opportunity to commend you because you're gonna get through a 2-year work plan in 6 months. At this pace. Having said that. Good discussion, good feedback. We're feeling good about the policy. I think we can take some discretionary time and see if something comes in from our people.
Yeah, I actually stopped and chatted with them
Okay.
before they took off. They have my information, so they're gonna go ahead and we'll be in contact, and I offered to also loop in Detective Cooper. I think we actually did really good at touching on the things that they were most concerned about, which they reiterated when we chatted. So the, for clarification, and I don't know that Detective Cooper said this, it sounds like the 84-hour thing is still implemented in some places, but it just depends on jurisdiction. And it sounds like the 120 hours unequivocally will be the best practice at this point. So that was the number one concern. The second thing was making sure that we have robust training at both the officer level as well as our investigative level. And I think we do a really great job of training our officers who do the intake, and I think we're gonna continue doing that. I don't know if maybe you wanna speak to that, but and then Detective Cooper spoke with the rest of it. So I would honestly propose that if you'd like to vote on this tonight, we could do that. I plan on changing the 120 thing, and if we wanna also wait until I hear from them, we can do that too.
Counselor Gross?
Thank you, Chair. My preference would be, since we kind of extended, hey, we'd love to have any written comments. It just would seem disingenuous to pass it tonight and then something to come in. I mean, if we just postpone it 1 month, that shouldn't really. I mean, I'm ready to go as written, except I would like to see what they sent in.
And I would just take a look at the definition and the need for having this term qualified investigator. If it's not necessary, then scrub it.
think we could very quickly make it an action item at the next meeting and give you an update on what happened.
Not have to go through it all again.
I have a question. Can I make suggestion that that's not voting? Am I allowed to do that? Anybody?
chair.
Chair away.
Okay, I have a couple comments. I wanted to know, and in legals, so maybe this is a legal thing, but victim is used. Can that be changed to survivors for a more positive? Or this is really just for police, so it's policy, so again, it's legally. Did that make sense?
I know the courts use the term victim when they're talking about survivors.
Okay,
And
it's,
And the ORS also.
Okay, okay.
So, yeah.
thank you, that answers that question. It says draft 2024.
Oh, I know, yeah, that's pretty nice. This was last reviewed in 24, so we'll just, yeah.
And then
It'll
there,
finish.
I have a question, 3.4.4, section E. Determine if there are, oh, wait. Determine if there are witnesses and canvass the area or neighborhood where the crime occurred if applicable. I'm not smart enough to know, so canvass for what?
For witnesses or video evidence or
So if you
evidence.
say canvass, you all know what that means.
But we could consider the fact that it's
It's not
not.
policy, if you know what it means. I'm just being finicky. No, section G of that same 3.4.4, no opinion of whether the case is unfounded should be included in a report. Seems obvious, but maybe. Facts, just the facts, ma'am. No opinionated language in any reports.
So I can speak to that actually, because when, unless, in a rare instance, let's say where we have like a patrol respond to like a stranger type of attack and they might make an arrest that night. Most of the sexual assault reports that are taken end up in the violent crimes unit. And so we, and those are gonna be reviewed, whether they are suspended or whether they are open. And what we don't want is, what we don't wanna see is, the officer that's taking the initial report to, be putting, too much of their own opinion, about the case, in there. So it's suspended or open, and then we'll investigate further and dispute the case later.
So, yeah, no opinionated language, facts, just fact, okay. Section 3.4.8 under reporting. The second sentence, this includes incidents in which the allegations appear unfounded or unsubstantiated. Can that just be taken out? So in all reported or suspected cases of sexual assault, a report should be written and considered for assignment for a follow-up investigation. It feels icky, which is not a formal policy term, but it does kind of air and feel a little unique too.
Okay, that's fair. So this is a procedure, which I know we haven't done a ton of those. It's by nature going to be more detailed and more of a, you do this step, you do this step, you do this step. And that specifically is really cueing in supervisors as they are approving reports.
Okay.
Even if this appears to be very unfounded or unsubstantiated and it will go nowhere, you will forward it for consideration for follow-up. Or at least review from our violent crimes unit, basically. So, if it comes in at the patrol level, it still needs to be reviewed and get that second set of eyes on it, see if it needs to be assigned to an investigator.
So it sounds like it's more guidance related in that, hey, be mindful of maybe if you haven't done one. Okay, I can get behind. Thank
Or
you.
like a reminder, it would seem.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's like you're talking from the heavens, Commissioner Bertrand.
It's an interesting distinction, because we often don't have these in front of you, but the difference between a procedure and a policy. And Allison pointed that out. I guess I hadn't even noticed on the top of that page, but they are much more prescriptive because they're more like the playbook for us. They're not high-level policy guidance. It's more detailed. If you need to go someplace to figure out what my next step is, that's good. So it will, by nature, be a little bit more.
And I'd appreciate that. If I didn't know and I think that guidance, I would want to know that. So I can appreciate that. That's all I have.
Yeah, I have one more thing. I know we spoke about, I think it was maybe this spring, we had somebody from the public comment about, I think it was this procedure. And so I want to make sure that you all know and the public listening, as far as I can tell, there's no mention in here of anything that would sway anybody's belief of a defendant or a offender is being one gender over the other. So there's no language that's going to kind of insinuate that at this point, because we want to stay away from that insinuation entirely, because we know that offenders and victims can be either gender. So just putting that out there.
We did get that comment. Thank you
Yeah.
for remembering.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And I was reading through this and it sounds like online reporting, when it comes to some of these more severe cases, that is a call in, that can't be done online.
Yeah, our online, My PD Connect does not have a way for you to, that's not the right mechanism for that. So yeah, we are very intentional about not opening that up.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, so we're gonna wait to hear back. We're gonna keep this open. And we'll come back to it after we get some more info. So next policy 3.6 stalking incident.
I am going to also say that we can lean on Detective Cooper in this regard too.
Other duties as assigned, yeah.
And then I do want to point out, this one was much older. It had been a long time since this procedure was kind of evaluated, so. Yeah. You want me to go over what changed? Let's see what changed. Well, I mean, you see the red copy, a lot changed. And it turns out that, if we're being quite frank, this procedure focuses a lot on something called a uniform stalking complaint and a uniform stalking citation, which technically speaking is still a very legitimate process. It's dictated by the ORS, how it will happen. It's got it's very procedural in that regard. And it kind of goes through that. However, especially after conversations with the district attorney and in our county, it's pretty predominant that people will just go to the court and apply for a stalking protective order, rather than going through this uniform stalking complaint and citation process. There is a little part on restraining orders, but we do have other guidance on that and other policy stuff. So questions about that?
What's the difference between a stalking order and a restraining order?
So there's several types of protective orders that are all essentially different kinds of restraining orders, and it's really the definition of the relationship between the people that determines whether a person needs a stalking order versus a restraining order versus an elder abuse restraining order. So.
Commissioner Ed.
The wording seems fine, and the wording seems mostly oriented towards the law and what can and cannot be done and how long it's going to take, and it must take this long and not that long, and it's straightforward and logical, and I have no major. I have one question, but the main thing is my feeling upon reading it is such weak protection. In terms of you can have a stalking order, you can have a restraining order, and this gives a basis for prosecution when it's violated. It doesn't help the person right then. The part that really struck me though, and I assume this is a court matter, not a police policy matter, but that if the petitioner intends to appear in person, they may wish to have a support person present, read, Goon. As the respondent will be presumably present and a deputy sheriff is not always in attendance at the hearing. In other words, the person that you're scared to death of will be there, and you may not have any legal protection from the authorities, so bring your own. Yikes.
And that happens, and that's, you know, I can share my own experience. The first thing I would say is, to your first point, Jack, parts of this the violation of this does trigger a mandatory arrest though.
Mhm.
So, you know, there is some teeth to this in the event that we have probable cause to believe that somebody has violated a restraining order, that arrest gets made. And we're very robust about doing that. To your second point, you know, I've been the victim of stalking as the chief, which is kind of feels weird. I had an individual traveling from Illinois back here to kill me. Called every single day, and that repeated unwanted contact triggered my my SIU team, Special Investigation Unit team, to feel so compelled to file a stalking complaint on my behalf to protect me. And then, but to your point, when I had to go to court, when this was getting legislated, you know, and I certainly can protect myself because I look just like this and I was armed, but I'm in the courtroom with my stalker, and that happens all the time. And so that is a vulnerability for victims.
And a disincentive. If I'm scared to death of someone who's been stalking me, and now I have to appear in court to get protection, and they will be there, and there may not be any other protection for me there. That makes me think about, do I really want to go to court, or maybe I should move out of state, or?
And I think Lane County has a fairly robust victim services portion of the circuit court that would have an advocate, that they could have an advocate or somebody there. Oftentimes the courtrooms have a bailiff, an armed bailiff, and have that type of thing. But what is so compelling for victims is that if you don't show up,
yeah,
then it gets dismissed. And now, you know, so it's almost like, what's worse? Showing up and running the risk of being scared, having your offender in the same room with you, or not showing up knowing that this is going to get dismissed and now there's no accountability. So it is a bit of a conundrum for our victims that are dealing with this.
Yeah, it did not feel comfortable.
Sure.
It seemed perfectly reasonable as policy, but
sure.
Yeah, so, I appreciate what you had to say, because I think there's a lot of limitations to these types of things and what protections we're able to provide to our community, and it's complicated, and I'm glad you brought that up. I did really appreciate the second paragraph that you added about, how stalking results in serious injury and emotional trauma. I feel like that's a really important thing for folks to be reading as they're reviewing this, because historically that has not always been acknowledged, and it's great that it's like right at the top. And you know, so I was really glad to see that. I also thought that the rest of the language, I didn't see anything I was concerned or had questions about myself, and I had a question and now it's gone, but it was comes later.
Oh, you're not that.
No, I'm done because I'm stupid. Please go over.
You're not that, but thank you, Chair. I'm really troubled by this. I mean, I know this is outside EPD, but I mean, is there any provision in our court system that somebody that's appearing in court with their stalker 10 feet away can at least walk to their car? They're just on their own?
Well, I mean, when you think about, that work, that's civil work that happens, and generally speaking, when you think about whether it's a civil standby at a domestic violence scene or something like this, that the sheriff's office would be the likely resource for that.
Right.
This is unique in the sense that so much of what we're asking victims to consider, restraining order or stalking order, is governed by the court system. The mechanics of the whole thing
I get
happens
that.
over there, and so it does end up becoming more of and I don't want to use the term loosely in civil, but it becomes more of a civil standby type of situation. when we
Sure.
do that.
But again, I'm not trying to put this on EPD. I'm just trying to think this through. You know, you're already buzzing this person up because they're getting pulled into court from their perspective because of you. And now you're sitting in there and you're gonna have to leave and you're gonna be in a common area with no protection.
I was just gonna say that, and this is years ago, but there was a case out of Washington that really put kind of on a collision course, this kind of offender and victim contact where the accused has the right to confront their offender. Or the offender has the right to confront their accused. And this is probably a byproduct of that. We saw a marked change in like our domestic violence cases when we had to get to a place where, as a domestic violence victim / survivor, the offender had the right to question, who was accusing them of that. And it had a chilling effect on the number of people that were willing to report. And this feels a lot like that.
Yeah,
Some
it just doesn't feel good, but
Yeah.
anyway, we're not gonna solve that here.
I do want to respond, sorry. Our victim services, though, does an exceptional job at supporting folks in that situation. And I have seen times where they're like, okay, you come back into our office, you're gonna hang out here, we're gonna wait for that person to be departed from the building. And it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. Plus, this is a civil kind of thing, and while protective orders kind of start that way too, I think that's why this isn't used very much in this kind of limited, it's not used very much in Lane County at all, as far as I'm aware, and we do have such a robust system and support system and way to get people schooled up to get protective orders, so.
Just anecdotally, I've definitely seen victim services.
Yeah.
Do exactly that. The person starts there at the beginning of the day, they go to the courtroom, when it's time to go to the courtroom, they go back to the office. And then the security, I mean, the Lane County Sheriff's deputies are kind of just always on the move inside the courthouse, and they know the dockets and they know when it's, so it isn't perfect, but it's not, it isn't just throw the person to the wolves, so.
Okay, well,
And Chief is right, like the opportunity, it's a control thing, the whole crime is a control thing from the offender, so when they get that opportunity, sure that they take that opportunity to, play lawyer or whatever, I mean, it is traumatic, but there is, there are, sir, it's not it's imperfect, but there is some sensitivity to the whole thing.
I mean, I always look at my kids and put them in a situation like this, and I wanna apply that to the public. And it still just doesn't feel good.
Sure.
Commissioner Wilgus?
I'm gonna go to my 3.6.4.1 number 3. And I'm looking at, and this starts off with ORS 163.738. In the second sentence, it says the petitioner that the policy of the courts here. I was wondering if we could clarify what here means. Is
Lane
it the
County.
state of Oregon or Lane
Lane
County?
County.
Okay, could we just change that? Lane County?
Lane County courts, yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilgus. Commissioner Bertrand, you had your hand up?
I did previously. I guess I just had a quick question. Maybe I'm ignorant still to Eugene, but is there the option to attend virtually for the victim? in regards to some sort of court case, for a sexual assault victim or for a stalking victim or anything like that.
I don't know any specific thing that says that automatically can happen, but actually that's in the section we just reviewed. As long as it's, arrangements are made in advance, I believe that's something that is possible.
So then, that would allow the victim not to be in the courtroom then.
Right?
Yeah, and the word petitioner is synonymous with victim in this particular case.
And I think,
Okay.
yes,
Thank you.
victim services could be a great resource in, helping set that up and apply for that with the court.
Counselor Gay?
Yeah, so I remember, I was really glad to hear what you said about how, violations are taken very seriously and arrests are made for this, but I assume that is the same for restraining orders as well. And I know we have kind of a priority for calls and stuff, so I'm wondering where that would fall in that priority.
So if I were to put a volume number on this, we deal with restraining orders way more than we deal with stalking. Or stalking violations of a stalking. That's my experience. I don't know if that, I shouldn't probably speak like I'm actually a working cop, but restraining orders are much more prevalent. We treat them, if somebody's calling and there's a crime in progress, we treat the restraining order violation. I'd like to believe we treat the restraining order violation much like we would treat an in progress domestic violence type of thing. So, because usually the restraining order is a outcome of some kind of previous incident, doesn't always have to be physical violence, but a previous incident that would suggest that the victim is in fear of imminent fear of serious physical injury or death, depending on the circumstances, then we would go. And then if probable cause exists to believe that the person had violated the restraining order, that arrest does get made.
And it's a mandatory.
And it's a mandatory arrest. It's one of the few mandatory arrests we have in our statute. There's only a few of them, that's one.
That's really great to hear.
DV, the restraining order violation, and actually, interestingly enough, some animal abuse is mandatory arrest.
I didn't know that.
I wanted to know, section 3.6.3 uniform stalking complaint. Officers shall complete a thorough investigation and results of any of the investigation within 3 days. What does that look like for you all?
It's actually, that's very statutory language. It's. Sorry, here, ordered within 3 days, regardless of any. So like, I mean, it's just a timeline.
Yeah, it's probably just taken from statute. I know, like, if an officer takes a report regarding a restraining order, stalking, any protective order violation, they have to, that's not something that they can set aside to respond to another call or work on later. They need to complete that report while they're on that call.
Like expedited.
The 3 days is established by the courts and district attorney's office. They have to go in front of a magistrate within 3 days. And so the only way that we can do that robustly is to make sure that the district attorney's office has the information within that period of time. So really, that's a timeline set by the courts, because I think they have to meet that timeline for the accused.
So if someone calls in a complaint or makes a complaint, whatever the procedure is, they're not waiting 3 days before the paperwork gets processed. That's just the limit on how long it can be before the paperwork moves along. Gets set, right?
Yeah, so the uniform stalking complaint is like a citation that we issue, and your court date is 3 days from now. So we better get on it and make sure that the district attorney has the information within 3 days, so that when you show up in 3 days, that the judge has something in front of them, otherwise it's getting dismissed. So it's basically just a timeline for us saying, you got 3 days to get your stuff.
To get on it.
To get on it, because that's basically the court date that person has to get in front of in front of the judge. That's my experience has been.
So thank you for the explanation. For the investigation piece of it, so our investigators basically hitting the ground running, looking for any kind of evidence they can gather digitally, however it's gathered?
Sure, so these are these are coming in as calls to patrol and, they are, they're a call that an officer has to work, to exhaustion while they're on that call. So much just like if somebody responded to domestic violence, incident, they couldn't, set that aside planning to finish it later in their shift. They need to take care of that right now. And really, exhaust the, their ability to solve the crime, locate the suspect, whatever, within their shift.
The piece, the burden of proof for us in stalking is repeated unwanted contact. So what we would be doing is trying to gather information to suggest that it's repeated and it's unwanted. So much of the unwanted piece is a bit subjective for the victim. But the repeated piece is stuff that we can show, okay, look at all these emails, look at all these text messages, here's the call log. That's the type of stuff officers would gather in preparation for this, is to show at least that burden of proof around repeated. And again, the articulating the unwanted part is a little bit more difficult, because that's really more about the narrative and the story that the victim would be telling about it being unwanted. But those are the two components of stalking that we like to try to do.
The actual stalking arrests without the stalking, when there's no stalking order, they're actually pretty rare. I've most commonly seen them in actual domestic violence situations where you probably have other charges going on. Someone's trying to separate from somebody else after an assault or something, and they're continuing to pursue the victim.
Yeah. So if you think about it, you could have for instance, a domestic violence situation that resulted in a restraining order that said, and the restraining orders are very prescriptive, like not within 100 feet of the person, not contact them at work or school or that thing. Sometimes they're not overly robust, that go all the way down the path of like no phone calls, no text message, and especially now with electronics. When I started as a baby cop, you either, one, two. I mean, you didn't have the ability to contact. So it was really all about, did you show up at the person's house or their place of employment? And now there's so many ways to get to victims through social media. So if it's not articulated that way, sometimes what a complementary piece can be is arresting them like for the domestic violence and show the repeated unwanted contact through a variety of other mediums could prompt a stalking arrest in conjunction with that. So that's the best way I can kind of explain.
Any other discussion?
So, why would someone get this? What is the advantage, or I'm trying to figure out what is the difference between this and a restraining order? And it sounds like these are less popular. So are they harder to get? Popular is probably not a good word for use. Utilize.
I don't know. I think it's a burden of proof thing in the courts, feels like to me sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard for me to decipher sometimes. So, obviously you have the criminal charge of stalking that an officer can make a probable cause arrest on without any sort of protective order. And then you have restraining orders and stalking orders, and the restraining orders are for relationships where people at some point at least had an intimate relationship. And with the stalking orders, there's the relationship, there was no intimate relationship between the protected person and the restrained. And each of those different protective orders, they have just very little subtle differences in qualifications for them. Like I said, for their sexual assault protective orders and the jail or the sheriff's there's a pretrial no contact orders. There's just subtle little differences between the two and or between the several, and I don't keep those, what constitutes that, I don't keep that fresh in my head. I typically just encourage people to talk to victim services. They're familiar with that. They can guide you through the process of applying for whatever the appropriate protective order is for the situation.
So there's a crime of stalking.
Yeah.
So you set that aside. Anything that has the word order on the back of it, it's basically contempt of court. So the court order says thou shalt not do that, and if you violate it, then you're held in contempt of court with an automatic arrest. So it's basically you violated the judge's order of either being restrained and or stalking this particular person, and then we arrest based on that, but the crime of stalking can happen with probable cause outside of that.
Commissioner Levy?
Yeah, again, just anecdotally, but I suspect a lot of this is driven by the family lawyers, like that, in the course of representing and dissolution proceedings and things like that, that they'll skip the police and go and just have their client go in and file and obtain it without, outside of, and that, I don't know how much that drives it, but I know that it's not uncommon in contentious divorces and things that protective, orders of protection are sought, and it's an there's probably even a business side of it for the lawyers to not send their clients to the police, but instead accompany them to court and obtain I don't know, but I mean, I know that that probably happens quite a bit.
And I would just, the last thing I'd say, just to your point, Counselor DA, is that my experience has been a restraining order is more connected to a threat of violence against the victim. A stalking order is easier to get because it's just simply repeated unwanted content. There doesn't need to be necessarily a component of violence there. It can just be, I'm being harassed and doing that. And so that's the distinction I have in my mind when I think about experience with the police.
That's really helpful. Thank you. All
Question, so. May have checked out just a little bit. It sounds like a restraining order may have a higher outcome or a stronger outcome for offense. Harsher punishment? So for instance, say, if you have a restraining order, if they break that restraining order, they're going to jail maybe for a little bit longer versus a stalking order where you go, or is that not at all? Maybe step up.
I kind of have a theory about other counties might not have such a robust and kind of fluid process for, I can walk into court tomorrow morning and I can go see victim services and I can apply for a restraining order and I can have that signed by a judge that morning. And then 30 days later, we'll have a hearing to see if it's going to be upheld. And that's going to be, at least one person served. It just seems like kind of it's probably a great process and a great tool to have in a county where we don't have quite the same setup, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to call it archaic, but that's how it comes off, this citation process.
It's hard to your point,
I don't know.
Chair, it's hard because like, for instance, an arrest for a restraining order violation. In some instances is anchored to some predicate event that occurred before that can be bundled together. So I keep coming back to the domestic violence thing. Domestic violence, almost every, many of our domestic violence arrests and or cases have an accompanying restraining order for that person before you can get out of jail, for instance. Now that's a completely different one where I have a no contact order coming out of the jail. In violation of a no contact order has a completely different one. But they're connected, and so there could be a complementary piece to an original case around an incident of violence. So it's not a one size fits all, like somehow a restraining order is worse than a stalking order. I think it's all about kind of the totality of the circumstances that drove the restraining order or drove the stalking.
Thank you, that helps. Do we have a no contact order procedure?
Sorry you said that.
You can take it back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
There's a policy about how we go about the process we have to go through for making an arrest on a protective order, because there's a specific, we don't rely on court orders or copies of restraining orders that the public produces for us. We contact our station 2 and ask them to run a person for a records check, which would reveal whether there is a protective order in place. Then the dispatch would confirm that with the agency that holds it. The officer be given a copy that comes from the agency that holds that protective order, so that they can trust that it's the real deal. And then they have to carefully read the provisions of the order before making any sort of determination of probable cause.
So is the protective order kind of an umbrella for no contact orders? restraining
Yes.
order? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, restraining orders, stalking orders, no contact orders are all types of protective orders.
And the no contact that the chief's referring to is often a condition of release and could be a pretrial condition of release, in which case pretrial services, like the jurisdiction to get someone who's violating their conditions of release is not typically EPD.
Okay.
There is a policy 320, which might have come before you all at some point. It looks like we last updated on December 11th of 2024 for domestic violence and restraining orders, and that covers all that stuff. So 320, you guys can take a look at that.
I'll move that we approve this procedure.
Thank you, Commissioner. Wood. Thank you, gentlemen. All in favor to approve policy or procedure 3.6, raise your hand or say aye. It looks like we have a unanimous vote. Thank you. 3.6 procedure has passed unanimously. Wonderful discussion. All right, closing comments. Start with you, Vice Chair Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad you're back. Yeah, thank you all. That's all I have. Okay.
Commissioner Reed.
Yeah, I wanna, say something about a point the chief made earlier about that it was bad news to hear that with down 20 staff positions, he had to flush a panel of 10. And to me, that's great news. And I'll tell you why, even though I know it's hard, it means everyone has to work harder and things aren't quite as covered when there's 20 positions missing. But that gives me such confidence that we didn't say, well, gosh, we're so short of staff, I guess we'll take this one, even though, a little questionable, that we keep high standards is so important in getting us the department we want. To me, that's good news. I have been frequently, I know, giving commissioners advice on you really should do this, you really should do that. And I'm gonna give you some more. I know you like it so much, but. Michael Clues is the head of the union, and he has sent out to everyone an invitation to coffee individually. I would just recommend that you take him up on it. The coffee's good, and it is very useful in our position as community advisors to the department or consultants to the department on questions of policy to get as many perspectives as we can on what that policy means in action. Both for citizens and for officers. And Michael is an excellent way to find this out. He's good company and you will learn a lot. I highly recommend it. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reed. Counselor Yang.
Yeah, thank you. I try to meet with Michael when I can, and I will say that he is an easy person to talk to, and yeah, so I would just second if you have the time to meet with him. I think it's worth the time. Whether you agree or disagree, it's going to be a great conversation. That has been my experience. As a side note, I am currently reading this book, The History of my brain is died. The History of Rape Kits, and it is very fascinating. And when I finish it, which may be a while, if anyone is interested, I will pass it along because. I have, it was coincidental that I was reading it while we were doing the sexual assault, and there was some interesting history in it that related back to that. So anyways, when I finish it, I will offer it up.
Thank you, Counselor Lee. Yeah, who's the author on that?
I don't remember, but I will text it to you.
Thanks so much. Commissioner Wilkes.
Thank you, everyone, for the work tonight. I'm glad to be a part of this group.
Counselor Groves.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was a really interesting meeting. I appreciate all three of you and the input you gave. I think that's really was helpful. I know I learned a lot tonight. I meet with Michael Clues regularly and I find it very helpful. Probably not every month, at least every other month. And, you know, as far as the 10 applicants that didn't make the cut, there was a former Eugene police chief, J.R. Hill, who's a friend of mine. I asked him, he made a kind of a sea change in the department one point. And I said, how did you do that? And he said, well, part of being part of an exclusive team means not everybody gets to join. And he just took that mindset. And I think that's appropriate. Not everybody should be a police officer. And I appreciate, I know I got pushed in a couple times hiring people we shouldn't have and fired. And then end up being mistakes every time. And so I appreciate you having the discipline when you're looking at overtime usage and rates and all the things you have to do as an executive. Sometimes it's really hard to make those decisions, but I think that's the right decision, especially in law enforcement. So thank you for having the fortitude to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you, Chair. Nice to have you back, Chair. Thank you all. I think it's an excellent and productive meeting. Thank the auditor's office and the people from the auditor's office that have been sticking with this meeting online. I think that's an important piece of it. I have been watching the new season of Live PD on A&E. It's been quite compelling and quite fascinating. So, but otherwise, thank you all.
Commissioner Bertrand.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing much. Likewise, glad to be part of the group and glad that you're back.
And thank you all for being so awesome. Really, I'm very grateful to work with you all and thank you for coming and joining, taking your evening to come be here with us. Sergeant Jordan, you're just a delight. Thank you for all that you're doing for us. Craig, I'm so glad you're here. Glad to see you. Chief, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for keeping us up to date on everything. We appreciate it. Larry, thank you. I hope your phone is back. And again, huge thank you to you. You're a great VC. I'm so grateful. Okay, you did something and I wasn't sure about it. So do we need to do a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
He's got his name tag in hand.
All those in favor of adjourning? Do we have to put in things? Thank you.
You can just close the meeting here.
And if you haven't